Underscore is a wonderful podcast that takes a deep look into film music and goes into a wonderful analysis. Naturally, they have an episode talking about the different instruments and their roles. As a horn player, I of course was curious what they said. Some great, some not so great, so let's take a listen.
I really think it's one of the most versatile instruments in terms of timbre. It supports a 3.5 octave range from concert B1 to F5.
The range of the horn is about 4 octaves, E below bass clef to E above treble. At least the most common rep for horn doesn't go outside that range, but there are a few exceptions like Haydn 51 and Bach Cantata 14.
The horn is interesting in terms of how it transposes because it's similar to the English horn. I guess they're both horns, so to speak, so that actually helps to remember transposition, but they transpose up a fifth in terms of what they're reading.
Remember that English horn is a type of oboe, and not English, by the way.
There are anywhere from 4 to 8 horn players, sometimes upwards of 12 in orchestras that really want to have that powerful, quote-unquote, lead guitar horn sound.
Right. What piece contains 12 horns? There are a handful that have 8, like in Mahler's symphonies, 10 in his second, Strauss tone poems like Ein Heldenleben or Till Eulenspiegel. Then there's Bryan's Symphony No. 1 with 16 parts, and Strauss's Alpine Symphony with 20 total. I don't know any piece that calls for 12. Can anyone fill me in? One might exist that I just don't know about. The closest that I could find was this picture from the Hollywood Horns, and there's 12 horns here for this recording session.
There's something unique to the horn, which is that it's possible to stop the horn, meaning insert your hand into the bell of the instrument to sort of mute the sound. When that happens, that actually alters the pitch that's coming out of the instrument.
Remember that our hand is already inserted. What he means is to close off the bell with our hand.
They're so adept at transposing. There are differing traditions of whether horns should be written in concert key or whether they're written in their own transposed keys.
For transposition, they are referring to film scores only, and that's why other keys that we transpose from on the fly are not mentioned here. From my understanding, soundtracks include either an F or C parts, C alto from what I can tell. But when talking during the sessions to change what's on the page, it's always in concert pitch.
They're often asked to do for their instrument something that it was not intended to do. Often the horns are asked to play much higher than they were really intended to play.
Horns aren't necessarily asked to play higher than originally intended. There is the school of thought that you don't need to play above a high C or below pedal F, but this is quite silly to me as there are many pieces written outside that range. This is probably where they got this idea of playing higher than originally intended, but here are some examples from classic rep and movie rep going above that C.
Nanu.
Because that's the start of love at first flight. The moment love occurs may happen at different times. When you get the first glimpse of the airplane.
and they sport a 2.5 octave range from concert, roughly E3 to C6. The instrument is played by buzzing air against that small mouthpiece that I mentioned, with 3, sometimes 4 depressible valves or keys.
3, sometimes 4? Remember, the standard horn used today has 4. Sometimes a single B-flat or even a single high F will be used. The numbers are right, they're just backwards.
In the time of, say, Mozart and Haydn, they would have to switch out what were called crooks, which were the tubing of their horn, in order to actually change the key and play pitches outside of that basic harmonic series.
Changing crooks changes the harmonic series into a different key. You gain new notes, but you'll lose the ones that you had. The harmonic series is the same in terms of the relationship of the notes in it.
I want to quickly mention what's called the Wagner tuba or tuban. It's an instrument that was created for Richard Wagner's Ring Cycle of operas. It's another transposing brass instrument, often played by a horn player.
Does anyone know of someone other than a horn player that doubles on tuban? That was just weird wording, and hey, I'm guilty of that too.
I just wanted to mention that because it does crop up in film music occasionally.
It crops up in about 1 out of every 4 films from 1968's Ice Station Zebra onward. With some films making them the big feature, like the theme to Air Force One.
If you want to hear a nice example, the rearrangement that Brian Tyler did of Jerry Goldsmith's Universal theme, he opens the theme with horns, and then tubans take the next phrase, and they're positioned on different sides of the stereo spectrum, so it's a pretty nice contrast there.
Why the rearrangement? Why not just go from the original one from 1998? In the original, there were 16 players, 8 on horn, 8 on tuban. From Brian Tyler's version, there are still 16 players placed on both sides of the orchestra, but they aren't split tuban on one side and horns on the other. So what are your thoughts in regards to horns in movies nowadays? Are horns being asked to play something different than what was originally intended, or different in general, or is this just a logical progression of music over time? Let me know down below, and I will see you all in the next video.